Welcome to In Our Town, Conversations with Springfieldians Making a Difference. I'm your host, Tom Carlson, publisher of the Springfield Daily Citizen. If you'd like to comment on this episode, our email is inourtown@sgfcitizen.org. We'd love to hear from you. My guest today is the Chancellor of the Ozark Technical Community College System. He also is president of OTC's Springfield campus. Dr. Hal Higdon has presided over the phenomenal growth of OTC and has shepherded in a wide range of training programs to meet of the ever-changing workforce here in the Ozarks. Dr. Higdon has been a fixture in Springfield since 2006. He's been actively involved with several organizations here. To mention a few, they include Burrell Mental Health, CoxHealth, and the Springfield Area Chamber of Commerce. He also has chaired the Association of Missouri Community Colleges. He is the longest-serving public college president in Missouri. Because of his tenure and expertise on workforce education, his advice is sought by many people in the business. He joins me today to talk about the current educational landscape in the Ozarks. We're going to talk about the opportunities and challenges facing students looking for good jobs in the local market. Dr. Higdon, welcome to In Our Town. And since I've known you for a long time, can I call you Hal?
Of course.
Well, as I said in my intro, Hal, you've been here since 2006. How's OTC changed since then?
Well, when I came in 2006, OTC was mainly in Springfield, had a campus under construction in Christian County, and had a small center it's shared with Drury and Missouri State in Lebanon, and that was about it. So since then, we've added campuses, we've added centers, we've added communities to our system, and we've grown both programmatically and through enrollment. How
many students now?
We'll serve somewhere between 15,000 to 16,000 this year.
Well, it continues to grow.
It does. A lot of it's organic growth. We live in the part of the state that's growing. There's many other parts of our state that aren't, so we're very fortunate to live in southwest Missouri.
Now, let's see. I'd probably hold us up trying to recall. Tell our listener where you have satellite locations.
So we have the original campus in Springfield. We have our second campus, which is Richwood Valley, which that piece of property is actually located in Nixa and Ozark, which I thought was pretty strategic on the part of the
It's on president. 14 between the two of them, right?
So both cities can claim us. We have a campus in Hollister down in Taney County. And we have a center in Republic, which is our newest center, and then we have centers in Lebanon and Waynesville, and then we teach at Fort Leonard Wood as well.
Well, I mean, you're known around for being a wise guy. I doubt that you would, wise in the best sense of the word, probably don't want to try to field a football team between Ozark and Nixa.
No, the Ozark-Nixa rivalry is real, so we try to stay very neutral.
So what was the kind of training that people would come to OTC for back in the old days?
Well, OTC started in 1990. Springfield was a huge community without a community college. So as things happen, like the closing of the Zenith plant and other things, the community leaders, and you were one of them, saw a need for a community college. So when it started out, it was an outgrowth of Grafo Tech, which was high school with some post-secondary.
That's right.
So, it
was at the old Lincoln High School, wasn't it?
Lincoln High, and then Graf Hall belonged to SPS. They turned them over to OTC, and they were not in great shape. But the founding president and the board spent a lot of money to rehab those buildings and turn Lincoln Hall into a beautiful building.
Was that Norm Myers?
Yeah.
Right.
We are 34 years old, and we've had two CEOs, which is very rare in higher ed. He was here 16, and I've been here 18.
Norm's still around, isn't he?
He is. I had lunch with him last week.
Does he still give you advice?
He does, and it's always good. And he's very complimentary. A lot of retired presidents throw rocks at their former institution, and he is just as supportive and positive as he can be.
There was some controversy about some of the changes at OTC early on. As I recall, there was an election to create the college,
right.
And the local universities were a little nervous about that. And
they were. They opposed it. Drury, I think, was the most nervous.
Right next door to them.
Well, and Drury had a huge continuing education program. and they really saw that as a threat, and it wasn't. It didn't hurt them at all. But in fact, Cliff Smart tells the story at Missouri State. If you look at when Missouri State, where it was in 1990, it was a much smaller university, open admission. Mm-hmm. The advent of OTC allowed them to become selective, and now they have 5,000 or 6,000 more students than they had then. So it's been a boom for the universities, because what people don't understand on the university level is there's a lot of people who would go to a community college who would not go to a big university or would not want to pay a huge price to go to a private university. And so we actually create a bigger pool. Missouri State has figured that out.
You didn't chop up the pie, and you just grew the pie.
We grew the pie, and Missouri State has really been the leader in embracing OTC.
So what's the kind of, I know OTC's always done lots of things, but how would you characterize the type of training that people got in the early days as opposed to what they get now?
Well, when they started in 90 and 91, you had your traditional welding, automotive, graphic design, printing. They had some LPN, some light allied health. But starting in 91, they began immediately adding a lot more. We have physical therapy assistant, dental hygiene, dental assistant, respiratory therapy. We added RNs after I came in 06. So it was basically a little vo-tech school under Graf, and then they took it over, and for a couple years they ran it and then grew it really quickly. And of course, general education is about half of our students are going to be there to transfer on to another institution, and about half
get the requirements out of the way.
Yeah, especially using the A+ program. Mm-hmm. And then about half are engaged either what I call a terminal degree, which would be an associate degree or certificate in some sort of technical program or health sciences, such as nursing, such as like one of our newer programs, line worker training.
I'm sorry, what is that?
Line worker training.
Line worker, yeah,
okay. Which we have one in Lebanon and one in Richwood Valley. And that's only a few years old, because one day the rural co-ops particularly woke up and realized all their pole climbers were getting old. So they came to us. Lead Electric was kind of the first. And then we've had support from CU and the others. And we're turning out 24 at each campus a year, and they're being hired immediately because there's a shortage.
So that leads me on to a question I had. So tell our viewers about the process that's undertaken in this circumstance. There's some company that's not located here in Springfield. They're interested. They've heard we had a really good workforce, but they need to have people that are trained on what they do in particular. And so they come to town, the chamber's courting them, and they ask that question. And so they call you up and say, Dr. Higdon, we've got this new company, but they need people to manufacture this widget, and there's nobody doing it here now. What's the process that goes through?
So the process is pretty basic and simple. It's the same that every state I've worked in. This is my third state. And the process is the same. Company X is going to build something, and the first thing they do is look at a community, look at the school districts, they look at home costs, they look at labor costs, but they also look at labor availability. And if they have a community college, you're a step ahead. We had a speaker at the Springfield Business Development Corporation annual meeting a couple of weeks ago, Ted Abernathy, and he said, the one key ingredient that you're looking for to recruit industry is a community college that's actively engaged in training within 30 miles of the site.
So you got to be able to put a check mark by each one of those
items.
Right.
If you have a poor school district, they're not going to come. You have inadequate roads, infrastructures, highways, they're not going to come. You don't have access to high-quality, affordable training. And that training could be something as advanced as needing programmers and network people that need an associate degree, or it may be the need to come into our manufacturing center and train on a CNC machine for 3 or 4 or 5 weeks. Or, we just have to be very flexible. Missouri has some customized training dollars that we can pull down from the state that the Springfield Business Development Corporation would leverage to help us pay for those training. But you use the word check mark, and there's this whole line of checks.
Right.
And the first one you miss, they go away.
Right.
And so that's a really important part of it is access to a labor market.
And so what if there's nobody here in town that knows how to train somebody on this particular piece of machinery? What about getting the machinery and somebody to work with it? How does that work?
So a lot of times we have access to a network of other schools that we'll pull down, but most times companies, they're very sophisticated now, they have access to the training they need you to. They just need you to agree to do it.
Okay.
So they would have a canned training program, might have to buy a piece of equipment, et cetera. But companies are very prescriptive to what they want. They just need somebody willing to say yes. And believe it or not every community has a community college that will say yes because they may be more focused on the transfer or more of a junior college as opposed to a technical community college.
I'm probably getting down on the weeds here, but I was talking to an employee of a hospital, and this person's job was to decide whether to buy and how much to pay for a sophisticated piece of equipment. MRI machine, you got to run so many people through that thing at a certain rate if you're going to recover your costs. Do you do that same kind of analysis?
We do, and it has to be able to be affordable. And so if we're going to buy a piece of equipment, it has to be something that is applicable for multiple industries. Or you have an industry that's going to use it enough that they would use it enough to justify. But we're not in the business of giving away equipment for free or buying equipment we don't need. But it has to make economic sense. Missouri has a little bit of funding for that, but most of the states we compete with have a lot of funding for that. And it puts us behind when we recruit industry because of the lack of investment and things like that by the state.
Let's talk just a little bit about funding for OTC. What's the sources of funding, and are we treated fairly here?
No, we're not. Neither is Missouri State, by the way. So OTC and Missouri State are among the lowest funded. We are the lowest funded in the state. I think Missouri State may be the lowest funded four-year, they were. And people ask why. The state of Missouri in 1993 decided to disassociate funding with enrollment. There were some colleges and universities that were chasing state dollars by basically giving away education and pulling in numbers to get their numbers up. So they made a decision to fix a problem by killing the industry.
I see.
So the legislature...
So their argument is, hey, if you switch to this new formula, you're going to do a lot of harm to us. So we need some kind of protection.
Right. So in 1993, Missouri State had thousands of less students. OTC had thousands of less students. And there's been no mechanism to grow that piece of the pie. We talked about a pie earlier.
Yeah.
So Missouri State, Crowder, OTC, State Fair, St. Charles, there's a lot of schools that have grown. So our formula rewards lack of growth and punishes growth. So
sort of counterintuitive, Hal.
Well, that's
one
kind of
word
government.
for it, huh?
Yeah, that's the decision. I think Governor Carnahan was the governor at that point in time, and they had a problem that needed to be fixed, but they used a shotgun approach. Instead of fixing the problem with the university that was the bad actor, they just changed. And it made sense at the time. And they put in the legislation that would be a look back to adjust every 5 years. They did that in 98. And then we instituted term limits. So by 2003, there was nobody left that remembered it. Mm-hmm. So there's never been a look back.
And so there were entrenched interests, and you're dealing with the legislature.
Well, the Budget Committee's meeting today, and I've been dealing with it on the phone all day. And our legislators are all good intentioned when they go up there. But, there's special interest. Right. We know that St. Louis and Kansas City have to have their piece of the pie, and they're going to get the biggest piece. And then it kind of leaves the rest of the state to fight over what's left.
Yeah, it seems like maybe you would do something like a hold harmless thing, which would say, okay, community college X, you're getting this amount. We're not going to cut you,
right.
But we got to address these other needs. But it's not. Not in the cards, huh?
I will brag on the community colleges. The community colleges have had their own internal formula outside of the legislature. So the legislature says, okay, you'll figure out how to, and we're taking a little bite at the apple every year. It's getting better, but the state has never put money behind it to help us do that. We're 47th in higher ed funding in the country. So the best funded college in the state is underfunded. So even if you're at the top of the pyramid, let's say St. Louis Community College is the best funded out of 12, they're only funded at slightly less than the Midwest average. So
Right.
it's hard to take away from a school that is not overfunded. The same way with the universities. I think Truman may be the best funded, but it's hard to tell Truman, well, if you were in any other state, you'd be underfunded, but here you're overfunded. So the legislature has to make an investment in higher ed at some point, which Governor Parson has been really good about doing. And we've had some good years, but equity that really makes a difference is going to take an investment from the state. It would probably take $50 million to get community colleges even to where they should be. But we've made a little progress these last 4 or 5 years. Senator Huff, being Lincoln Huff, has really helped, and his ability to get dollars has really worked out well for us. Governor Parson has been great. Senator Huff, Representative Smith on the House have all overseen historic investments, particularly in one-time money with ARPA. But
Right.
at some point in time, we need to get the operating income up.
Well, it's going to be a challenge in a conservative state that's wanting to continue to cut taxes.
It is, and we have to be mindful that the majority is going to just do what they're going to do, but we have to show the value proposition, which I think community colleges can do and OTC can do particularly well, and that the return on investment is really high. You ask about our budget. Of our budget, 65% is tuition. The rest is split between local and state taxes. So we're run almost more like a private than we are a state institution.
And I'm sure you being the president of the local campus, you would make a strong pitch to prospective students about what a good value going to OTC is.
It is. If you're an A-plus student, you can go for no cost. If you're 25 or over and don't have an associate degree and your family income's less than $80,000, you can go to free on the fast track program. Plus, Missouri has the Access Missouri, and then there's Pell as well. So there's every possibility that you can get out of OTC without any debt. And then if you are going on to Drury or Missouri State or Evangel, you can go into there with really good transfer scholarships. They're all really they like our students, and then you could have saved a little money while you're going at OTC before you get to the university.
So let me give you a hypothetical. You have a niece or a nephew's about to graduate from high school. How would you counsel them, and what things should they think about in deciding whether to go for a technical education or for the traditional four-year degree?
There's this trend where everybody's saying not everybody needs a university degree.
Right.
And that's true, but that doesn't mean nobody needs a university degree. So,
Right.
Putting on my non-OTC hat, I would talk to the student about what they're passionate about, what their social life is about. I went to a traditional four-year school and had 4 years of a lot of fun, not much GPA, but a lot of fun, and then got down to work on my master's degree. And I think that was the best path for me. So, if you have that want to be in a traditional setting and go off to college, then you should do that. If your love is computers or graphic arts or working on around the house, our HVAC guys are making more than people with history degrees right now.
What would that be roughly?
Well, I mean, you can make 70, 80 grand as an HVAC tech right now.
How long does it take to get that degree?
2 years.
Okay.
So, I mean, think about it. But that's got to be the right thing for you. And I think the problem we had starting in the 60s, we had this thing where everybody needed a degree. And we probably got a lot of people, and I meet people all the time that are working on my plumbing or they're working on my house, and they've got a bachelor's degree somewhere way back in sociology or criminal justice or something. And they went to college just to go to college.
Right.
And then they ended up having to have a career. So we have to do a much better job getting 18-year-olds who are probably not really that mature to decide what their life's going to be. And I'm a big proponent. I know in Europe they do it, but the gap year, I wouldn't mind seeing a gap year come here where you kind of take a year before you start your education.
Right.
But what I would tell a student is, what are you passionate about? What do you love to do? If you love to work with computers, we can put you in cyber technology, and you can be hired halfway through your degree because they'll come in and hire you out from under us.
Well, in fact, I was, and I'm going to ask you about it, but I was toured the Plaster Advanced Manufacturing Center a couple of weeks ago, and I asked the person giving the tour about what the graduation rate was, and the lady said, well, not everybody graduates because a lot of them get hired halfway through.
It is interesting, particularly anything doing with computers or robotics. We have a company running out of the center. You probably saw it, the High Bay. We've got a company down there that is building robots that package and label pharmaceuticals. Well, 2 or 3 of the employees used to work on the other side of the building, and they just went over to class and hired them, but they told them to stay in school. But, if you're a company and you're desperate for people, and they're already trained and don't have a certificate yet, they will hire them. We encourage them not to do that, or at least to hire them part-time and let them finish. But we're in a labor market like I've never seen before. Skilled labor is so short. Your gray hair and what hair I have is gray. The baby boomers have retired, and they retired faster than anticipated, I think, because of COVID. But actuarially, we knew this was going to happen. I think it got sped up in 2020.
You're talking about the enrollment cliff.
Yeah, but it's not just enrollment cliff, it's a labor cliff.
Okay.
I'm 62. I've got several good friends that have already retired, and they're looking at what they're going to do with the next part of their life, and frankly, they're not being replaced. Generation X, and then you have millennials, and you have Zs, and X is big, millennials are smaller, Zs are smaller. We're not having a lot of net immigration, so we're facing the same problem China and Japan are, which is a stagnant economy because of a stagnant labor pool.
Where do you come down on this current issue of artificial intelligence?
Whoever uses it best will win. We better.
You think it's inevitable?
It's already here.
Okay.
If you had to deal with an airline or a credit card company, half the time you're talking to someone who's artificially intelligent.
You're talking about the individual.
But
or the machine.
The machine. But AI is here. And if we're going to continue the American experience and American experiment and be successful, we need to own AI. We need to produce the chips that run AI. And I think that, we could have another economic renaissance in America, but we have to win the AI battle. And people watch too much science fiction. I think we've all seen where the robots take over, but
right.
They're going to somebody else is going to build evil robots. Let's us build the good ones.
There was a historic figure, I think his name was Nate Luddite, back in the early 1800s in England, and England was starting to develop mechanized mills, and he was worried it was going to throw everybody out of work.
Yeah.
And there was a riot and everything. So now today, people who are concerned or afraid of the advances in technology are called Luddites.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, yes, there is, historically there's been job displacement, but the advances in technology seem to replace all those empty jobs.
Well, and, with a decreasing population, or at least negative growth, you're now not replacing people and putting them out of work. You're replacing people who are not in the market anymore. Yeah,
I suppose that's true. But what about these folks that just they're getting on in life, and it's just hard for them to learn new things?
Oh, I know. I was talking to my parents this weekend, and my dad said, "You know how I feel about technology." And I said, "Yeah." And what are you holding right now? He goes, "My iPad." And I said, and I send an email and I get an answer in 10 seconds. You're doing fine with technology. And but I think it's probably always been that way. When I was a kid in the 60s and 70s, I can remember hearing my parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles lamenting that, things are changing, prices are going up. We're the last generation.
Right.
I think part of getting older is lamenting the way things were. And we just have to understand that technology is our friend, it's not our enemy.
We'll be right back after this short break.
Hi, I'm Ryan Collins. I'm the Business and Economic Development Reporter at the Springfield Daily Citizen. Pretty much born and raised in Springfield. I went to Glendale High School. I graduated from the University of Missouri with degrees in journalism and economics. hired directly by Bloomberg News right after college. It's been very refreshing to come back to Springfield, report on the city. I think one of the best aspects of my job is just being in the know. I'm constantly in touch with people all across different types of companies. And I think we have a lot of moving parts right now that are trying to work together, and I feel very lucky to try to cover that. After my week, I spend time with my dog. I definitely try to get out in nature. We go out to Busick or somewhere like that. Nash. He's named after my favorite economist, John Nash.
I want to ask you several things, so I hope I don't go too quickly. I know your time is valuable. What about, it's not exactly a local issue. I mean, it's in the sense that OTC doesn't get to change the federal law, but what do you think about this Biden's proposal to forgive student debt?
Well, from what I read of his, it's people engaged in certain industries or public service, and I think that's fine. I was a little reluctant to do his mass debt relief because if you're going to do it, fix the problem that created it before you try, because that's a temporary.
Good point, yeah.
So, we've made some mistakes as a country, Republican and Democrat, with the way we structured student loans. We made them really too easy to get. We made the process pretty simple. We allowed people to borrow more than they needed. And then we allowed people
or not you, but a lot of incentivized bad decisions.
Yeah. And so, went to borrow $200,000 to get a degree in Elizabethan poetry.
Right.
If you got $200,000,
that's your bag. That's one thing.
But if you borrow $200,000 and you're never going to do anything but ask if you want fries with that, are you making a wise decision?
It's not. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And then there's this whole other part of the industry, which are bad actor, for-profit, and quasi not-for-profit, that are selling inferior education. So you've got quality.
And they were really misrepresenting to the prospective students often what they could get.
Yeah, we had several here in town that went away, like Everest and Vatterott and ITT Tech, and so there's not as many of them as they used to be. But if you look at the debt, the bad debt, a lot of it came from them.
The thing that bugs me about it, and I understand there are equities both ways, but if you're going to forgive student A's debt over here, what do you say to student B's mom and dad who didn't get a new car and scrimped and saved to put their kid through school? I mean, aren't you just basically calling them a chump?
Well, I think you are, and I think that's why it cuts across. I have good friends that are Republicans and Democrats, and some of the Republicans want their loans forgiven. The Democrats don't want the loans forgiven. So it kind of goes across a bipartisan thing. And
that's one thing that the Republicans, Democrats might agree on. Huh?
Forgive my debt, but don't forgive yours. But, I have a friend of mine who paid his off 2 years ago, paid it off early. He and his wife and he's like, I'm going to be really ticked off if my friend George, just making up a name, borrowed way too much, hadn't been making payments, is in default, and all of a sudden he gets it. There's a fairness issue there.
Right.
So I think, I don't mind if you're doing public service and forgiving some of it, Teach America and all that sort of thing.
Right.
But if we're going to start forgiving debt, we need to find the problem that let us produce $1 trillion worth of debt.
Well, that's an excellent point. Fix it before you just. Yeah. It's sort of like the government with flood insurance on the coast. All right, so the hurricane tore down your house, and now we're going to give you insurance to rebuild it. And if it costs more, it just comes out of the taxpayer's pocket.
Anyway. The person that built the house 4 times, maybe God's trying to tell you it's time to move.
You've done some pretty interesting things lately. There was a recent announcement about the Alliance on Healthcare Education.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, it's an exciting concept. We've got several universities here in town. We have 2 big health systems. CoxHealth had its own private standalone college, Cox College, and all of medical areas are experiencing shortage, from doctors to nurses to EMTs. And so Cox,
That's one population that's getting bigger, the older folks.
yeah, and we need more services.
Right.
And so they knew that they could not fight their way out of this labor shortage with just Cox College and then what they get from OTC and Missouri State and everything else. So they came to, Cliff Smart, myself, and then the superintendent, Dr. Grenada Lathan, and said, we'd like to find a way. And we did this research. Nobody else has really done this. This is unique to Missouri, where we create a public-private partnership, collapse Cox College into this alliance, and then we start with 11th graders and start them into a program where the least they get when they graduate is a CNA or an EMS.
Well, tell our listeners what that means.
Certified Nursing Technician or Emergency Medical Services Tech.
Okay.
But they also could, if they're really bright and they work hard, they could get an associate degree in biological sciences and be ready to go straight into nursing school when they're freshmen. They could go to Missouri State basically as a junior.
My goodness, wow. Yeah.
And so,
Excuse me for interrupting, but what does that require each of you to do to make this work?
well, what we are doing is we've agreed to accept all the degrees that are appropriate for us, radiology, nursing, et cetera, that will become OTC. So we've applied to the state, through the state board, and through the Higher Learning Commission to transfer those programs from Cox College to OTC.
Okay.
Missouri State has taken the programs that are appropriate for them, BSN, bachelor's degree in science and nursing, their master's nurses, et cetera, and we will locate at Cox North. And so you will still be an OTC student, but you'll be located at Cox North. You'll still be a Missouri State student. You'll be located at Cox North. And then we'll have the SPS line feeding us through, but we're also reaching out to Ozark, Nixa, Republic, Willard, Marshfield to really build this pipeline. There's no reason we can't have 3,000 or 4,000 students in this pipeline. Maybe they're in their home school, but they're still in this pipeline where they run through OTC, run through Missouri State, and we create a lot more nurses, a lot more med-surg techs, a lot more CNAs for not just Cox, but for Mercy and all the other surrounding area.
Well, how long till that thing's up and running?
Well, we'll take our first class of high school people this fall in 24, but the kickoff of the college program will be fall of 25.
Okay. I know you're really excited about the Plaster Center for Advanced Manufacturing. That was a big project, like a $50 million price tag, right?
$40 million.
40?
If we built it today, it'd be 50. I mean, we built it. We got so lucky. We opened bids in the fall of 2020 when everybody was scared there wouldn't be work. And so we got a really good price on it. It's 120,000 square feet, 35,000 square feet of high base space, half of which we do our program, the big CNA machines, the robots, et cetera, half of which is for business and industry to attract to town, and they can work out of there for a while before they build a building. But lots of robotics, we call it mechatronics, advanced manufacturing. Drafting is a whole different industry than it used to be. The drafting now is using a lot of artificial intelligence, a lot of...
No kidding.
Yeah, so it used to, when I was in high school, there was a drafting lab down the hall, and they had the big tables and the T-squares and everything.
Right,
It's all done with computers now. So, and that building is filling up. The thing that if I could do it over again, I would have put more high base space for more industry partners.
We hear about, I had no idea, but what a big deal it is, video games, particularly with young people. And are you seeing the skills that they develop? I read about if you're really good at video games, maybe you'll be operating a drone someday over, Iraq or somewhere. Do you see those skills getting ported over into the, the technical education?
I can tell you that our instructors that are in networking or in computer information systems and cyber technology, these kids that are in their teens and 20s, they intuitively understand, they think like a computer. And of course, we have an esports team. We built an esports lab for kids to play, and they are just uber intelligent, uber plugged in, and those skills do translate, particularly into the computer-related areas.
Okay, in the time we have left, I want to shift to more of a community subject. Springfield's known as a city for collaboration between the big institutions. You're the longest, the people in my mind, or the organizations in my mind that were so impactful in that regard would be the Chamber, the City of Springfield, the Utility, Drury, Evangel, OTC. I'm probably leaving somebody out. But you had people there with a lot of tenure.
Mm-hmm.
Cliff Smart's leaving Missouri State. Drury just hired a new president. The president of Evangel hadn't been there very long. Have you announced when you're going to leave?
I have not made up my mind. The board may make it up for me one day, but I've still got another 5, 6, 7, 8 years left in me.
So there's a little tread left on the tire.
Yeah, Cliff is retiring in June, and I think he thought I'd go. He's just a couple years older than me. He thought I'd follow him, and I was like, nope, I'm still having fun. So,
well, okay, so here's maybe an example of that. In order to have effective collaboration, in my view, you got to have people that've been around for a while and know each other.
I agree.
I'm not throwing stones. I don't want to leave that impression. But there was recently announced I'll call it a joint venture between Cox and Mercy for a pediatric hospital.
Right.
So, lots of fanfare about all that. And then 6, 8 weeks later, Mercy says, no, we're going a different direction. And, and again, I'm an outsider looking in. I have no inside information about what was going on there. But, both the presidents of those hospitals are new people in town.
Well,
Max has been here a long time, but
Max has been here about 12 years. David has only been here a couple years, and I'm friends with both David and Max. And disclaimer, I'm the chair of the Cox board.
So you're part of the problem.
I am. I think that it comes down to very basic. Mercy, I think, and Cox both entered into the partnership with the best of intention. When they couldn't agree, at the end of the day, Mercy Springfield is subservient to St. Louis.
Right.
And that's the difference. I think Cox is a locally based, and I'm not sure that David had the ability to make the decision that he would have made for this community. It's a shame because the two systems together could have brought a world-class children's hospital here, and the decision Mercy made is going to make that much more difficult. But just speaking for the board at Cox, we're still committed to doing that. It's just not going to be as quick or as easy as it could have been with us doing it together. I have a lot of respect for David. I think he was in a difficult place. But
that's not the first time that issue's come up about just how much
out-of-town
control.
people. The good thing about Drury, Evangel, OTC, Missouri State, Cox, SPS, the city, we're all local. And when you serve a corporate master in another state or another city, at the end of the day, the corporate master calls the shots.
Right. But it gets me back to this issue of collaboration. And how are we going to how's the community going to meet those challenges in the future with everybody being the new kid on the block?
Well, when I came into the city of Springfield, 2006, there was a lot of tenure sitting around the chamber table.
Right.
Just, Jim Anderson, yourself, et cetera. It does make it better if you have a history because you learn to trust.
Right.
I could call Tom Carlson today, and I know he'd keep what I say confidential, and we could work together. When there's a new person, it makes it tougher. But I think it's incumbent on those who've been around a while to kind of be the person to say, listen, we can do this. But, we have a really good level of collaboration between Drury, SPS, Missouri State, OTC, and Evangel. Mike has come in at Evangel and hit the ground running, doing a really good job. John Burrell was a great interim president. I don't know the new president at Drury, but, we have a tradition that all the CEOs welcome them with a lunch.
Right.
We'll welcome Biff and, what's his name, Tom? I can't remember.
Is it Frederick? I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I
but
apologize.
Anyway,
I apologize
we'll
to the
welcome
incoming
the two new
president.
guys, and then we'll tell them, we don't play gotcha.
Yeah.
We give them the speech that Bob Spence gave me. Don't surprise me. Compete with me. But if you're going to cut my head off, tell me about it the day before. And Cliff and I have both made announcements that the other one didn't like, And Cliff's called me the day before and told me, and I appreciated it. So that type of professionalism we'll try to emulate. And
we just hope they drink the Kool-Aid.
Well, and some have, and some haven't, and you've seen this. When you don't collaborate, you evaporate.
I like that one. I haven't heard it before. That's good.
And so, Cliff Smart, collaborative, good partner, tough competitor. We're going to miss him. And I think that if the board made the right decision, which I think they did, we'll give Biff the opportunity. But, there was a president here for 8 months.
Right.
Who didn't collaborate even with people at Missouri State. And that's how we got Cliff. So I think there is a cost to lack of professionalism.
Last question. Is there anything I haven't asked you about you want to tell our listeners?
I took somebody to the airport Sunday, and it was really exciting to see the steel going up on our airframe and power plant building.
Oh, yes, right.
So we're really excited to be working on airplanes and helicopters here in about a year. And then we got another building that, assuming the legislature acts, we'll be building in Springfield, our Student Success and Workforce building. And then we've got our new Ag Center going up down in Richwood Valley. So got a lot going on.
That's wonderful news to hear. It says a lot about the community and our future, I think.
I feel very fortunate to live in Springfield, Missouri.
Dr. Higdon, thank you for being my guest today on In Our Town.
Thank you.
That's it for this week, and many thanks for listening. If you'd like to listen to other episodes, you can visit the Springfield Daily Citizen website at sgfcitizen.org/In Our Town, or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.